What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. New video. Today's video is part one of what I may turn into a series. And it's going to be a series about the most dangerous things about prison. When I say the most dangerous things about prison, I can only talk about California state prisons. I can't talk about the feds. I can't talk about any other prison system in any other state because I don't know it. Unfortunately, because of poor decisions, I know California prisons very well. For those of you that maybe are new to the channel, this is your first time seeing a video of mine. At 1989, I was sent to the California Youth Authority, which is prison for kids. That was in 1989 again. I paroled January 5th, 1993. June 29th, 1993, I was picked up for murder. And I didn't get out of prison until 2017. Over 24 years I did on that. So, when it comes to being incarcerated in California's jail systems and prisons, again, I have a lot of experience. Today's video, I want to talk about one of the biggest problems in prison: drug use. Prisons in California are packed with people who have an addiction to alcohol or some type of substance. Others that don't have that, or even coupled with that addiction and they're unaware of it, being an addiction is an addiction to a criminal lifestyle or an addiction to a lifestyle itself. That's what I had, a lifestyle addiction. So we see the impact of drugs on society out here in the free world. What you don't see is the impact of drug use behind the walls. It's its own world. And I try to give you guys glimpses at it. In no way, I see videos on TikTok and YouTube of other states of people who are using, I don't know what the drug is, and they're passed out like in the shower area or in the dorm. They're just all the way passed out, nodded out, and people are messing with them. You won't see that in California. I've never been on a dorm. I've never been on a level 2 in a California prison. So all I've lived in was cells in California prisons. And there are expectations. The different factions have different expectations that they place on the people that are part of their faction when it comes to using drugs. I can tell you, for Southerners, while I was in prison and places I was at, if you were going to be under the influence, stay in your cell. Dudes would come out of the cell if they were under the influence of heroin or meth, because they could still, for the most part, conduct themselves normally. Alcohol was a big thing. If you were going to be drinking, stay in the cell. We don't need you coming out and you got that liquid courage or just something in your system that may make you take something the wrong way or go the extra mile over nothing, because there will be punishments, not by the administration, but by your own faction for doing stuff like that. Now, in all transparency, I have to be honest. I didn't do drugs in prison. I sold drugs though. I have videos about that. When I entered the prison system, I saw immediately, because I was someone who always wanted, while I was in YA, I always hung around with the older homies. When I got to the joint, I gravitated to dudes who had done multiple shoe terms, who were very knowledgeable in the game in prison. I sought them out. I hung out with them. I knew I was never going to get out of prison Back then, lifers were never going to get out of prison. You were going to die in prison in California. So it made no sense for me to hang around with dudes my age and stumble upon knowledge. No, I sought it. And I noticed very quick that there were dudes that had a lot of influence. And if they had a drug habit, things could be bent certain ways because of their habit. And so I understood, I'm going to be putting in work. I'm going to be going to the shoe. And every time I get out of the shoe, I'm going to have the bag. I'm going to have the dope. And I'm going to have good dope. And I'm going to have things my way as much as I could, because there's someone above you at all times. Unless you're one of them, then you're slammed down in Pelican Bay. Now everybody's out, so it's different. But I want to talk about not only is it dangerous to use drugs in prison, not only is it just dangerous, you could OD, you can catch Hep C, stuff like that. That is the least of your concerns. The problem is people that have a habit, maybe they get sick, they got to get well, and they got to buy from certain people. See, there's guys in prison, for the Southerners, for an example. There's certain guys in prison that they hit some dope, they bring in some dope, and they're not connected. Those of you, hopefully you can figure out what that means. They're not connected. They're not made men, but they're not soldados. They're not soldiers. They're not connected to an organization, right? They get their own stuff. They kick down the people in charge, give them their percentage of the dope, and then they make a little money on the yard to take care of their family or whatever they do, take care of their own habit, whatever it may be. And then you have other guys that are connected, and they sell dope. And when you buy dope off of somebody that's connected, you just bought what's referred to as hot dope. You don't owe the guy you just got the dope from. No. You owe an organization. The average guy on the yard may be willing to overlook certain things or give you an extension when it's time to pay. When you buy hot dope, you obligated yourself to something that has the ability to remove you from this planet. Over $2, over $10, $50, whatever it may be. I had a homeboy, my older homeboy. He grew up with my dad. And we were Sally's in New Folsom. And he was running amok because he had started doing time in the 70s. There were a lot of people that gave him a lot of leeway, and he took advantage, as most would in that position. These dudes are going to let him do whatever he wants. He's going to do whatever he wants then. I told the story about him. He bought dope from the blacks, which was a no-no for Southerners. I was approached by somebody in leadership, and they said, hey, man, your homeboy owes some money. And I said, whack him. They were like, damn, like that? I said, you think I'm going to pay his debt? I didn't get high. I don't get high. Yeah, I almost, but hey, that vato's been around a long time. I said, yeah, then he knows better. Whack him. Instead, one of my other homeboys from Santa Barbara paid the debt for him. That same individual, we ran into each other in the Bay. We both got out of the shoe around the same time. When we both landed on B facility in Pelican Bay. I went out to yard and he was on the he was on the pull-up bars working out. I looked at him, I said, hey, check you out, Holmes. I said, you working out now? He's like, yup. I said, you ain't getting high? He said, shit. He said, all the dope on this yard is hot. I'm good. So for those of you who have a drug habit and you're criming it, gang banging, whatever it may be, and you're headed to the joint, you just don't give a damn, understand, when you get behind them walls and you want to party, you want to get high, you want to head change, make sure that you don't become a pig. See, everybody that sells dope in the joint knows a new dude hits the yard, he gets high, he's going to have his family looking out for him for a little while. Some, they look out better than others. But there's always a point where the family's like, hey, I can't keep doing this. You're going to have to figure out a hustle or something else. But see, by that time, they've developed this appetite, this habit in prison that they have to get well every day. Then they got to get high. But the money's funny now. And next thing you know, a good dude with a bad habit gonna wind up dead or on the other side. Not because he was a rat, not because he was a punk, not because he had bad charges, but because he had a habit he couldn't afford and he went and picked up some hot dope. So that's my video for today. Possibly episode 1 of dangerous activities in prison. If you guys think that I should continue down this, there's a lot of things that I could bring up that are dangerous activities in prison that may seem frivolous to people out here. Once again, that's my video for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Everybody, please be safe, be smart, and tell the ones you love that you love them, man. I'm out of here.